Blood dripped from Hannah Morrison's split lip onto the white snow, bright red against endless white. Her hand shook as she ran through the Colorado forest, 12 years old and barefoot because they'd stolen her boots. 30 minutes earlier, 3 girls cornered her in the school bathroom. "Your mom left because you're trash," Jessica spat, shoving Hannah's face toward the toilet bowl. Books floated in the water. Her homework, the essay she'd spent all night writing, dissolved into blue ink clouds. "Maybe she'd come back if you weren't so pathetic." Hannah's head went under. She couldn't breathe. When they finally let go, she ran past the principal's office, past the parking lot, into the mountains where the blizzard swallowed everything. The temperature read -15 Celsius. She had no coat, no phone, and then she saw it, golden eyes watching her from behind a snow-covered pine. Something was dying out here. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. The wolf wasn't moving. Hannah crouched beside it, her bare feet already numb against the frozen ground. The animal lay on its side beneath a snow-laden spruce, ribs heaving with shallow, desperate breaths, gray fur matted with ice, black-tipped ears flat against its skull. Its yellow eyes, barely open, tracked her movement without fear, without aggression, just exhaustion. She knew what her father had taught her: never touch wild animals, especially wolves. But this wasn't a textbook situation. This was a living creature dying 50 feet from where she stood, and the blizzard forecast said conditions would worsen in 2 hours. If she left it here, it would be dead before sunset. If she stayed to help it, she might freeze alongside it. Hannah made her decision in 3 seconds. She pulled off her thin sweater, her only layer besides a tank top, and wrapped it around her hands. The wolf was massive, easily 40 kilograms, maybe more. Its muzzle was long and powerful, built to crush bone. One bite could sever her hand. "Please don't kill me," she whispered, sliding her arms beneath its body. The wolf whimpered. It didn't resist. Hannah lifted with everything she had. Her arms screamed. Her back bent under the weight. Snow crunched beneath her bare feet as she took one step, then another. The cold bit into her exposed skin like 1,000 needles. 400 meters. That's how far she'd run from where she'd left her father's old Ford Jeep, parked on the logging road when she'd fled into the forest. 400 meters through knee-deep snow while carrying a dying predator. "You can do this," she told herself. "You have to." 50 meters in. Her legs buckled. She fell to one knee, the wolf sliding partially from her grip. Its head lolled back, tongue hanging loose. The breathing, already weak, grew fainter. 15 breaths per minute. That's what her father had taught her when they'd found an injured deer last spring. Anything below 20 meant critical distress. She counted. 1 breath, 2, 3, 12 breaths in a minute. "No, no, 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 stay with me." Hannah repositioned her grip and staggered forward, her vision blurred with tears that froze on her cheeks. Wind howled through the pines, driving snow sideways into her face. She couldn't feel her toes anymore. The Jeep's brown hood finally emerged through the white curtain of falling snow. Hannah nearly sobbed with relief. She'd stolen the keys from her father's jacket that morning. He'd been out checking the fence line and wouldn't be back until dark. She'd never driven before. 12 years old, no license, no practice. Doesn't matter now. Hannah yanked open the back door and heaved the wolf onto the seat. It didn't move. She grabbed the old wool blanket her father kept for emergencies and tucked it around the animal's body, then slammed the door and scrambled into the driver's seat. Keys in the ignition. Turn. The engine coughed, sputtered, died. "Come on!" Her voice cracked. She turned the key again. This time, it roared to life. Hannah had watched her father drive 1,000 times. Clutch, shift, gas. The Jeep lurched forward, tires spinning in the snow before catching traction. She gripped the wheel with white knuckles, steering down the narrow forest road at 15 kilometers per hour. Any faster and she'd slide off into the ditch. The barn was 3 kilometers away, 3 kilometers of winding mountain road in a worsening blizzard. She drove. Twice. The Jeep fishtailed. Once, she nearly crashed into a fallen branch, but she kept going, kept murmuring to the wolf in the back seat, "Hold on, just hold on." When the barn finally appeared, a weathered structure her father used for storage, Hannah almost cried again. She parked crookedly, killed the engine, and dragged the wolf inside. The old wood stove stood in the corner, unused for months. Hannah's hands shook so badly she could barely strike the match, but she got the kindling lit, then fed it larger pieces of split logs until flames crackled to life. She laid the wolf as close to the heat as she dared. Now came the hard part. The animal's fur was soaked through, clumped with ice crystals. Hannah found an old towel and began rubbing in slow, careful circles. The wolf's breathing remained shallow, maybe 15 breaths per minute now, but still dangerously low. She remembered the deer again. Her father had used warm water to help revive it. Hannah filled a metal cup from the barn's emergency water barrel and held it over the stove until it steamed. Then, kneeling beside the wolf, she dipped her fingers in and let drops fall into the corner of its mouth. 1 drop, 2, 3. The wolf's throat convulsed. It swallowed. Hannah kept going, drying the fur, warming it with blankets, dripping water onto its tongue. Her own body gradually stopped shivering as the stove's heat filled the small space. After an hour, she counted again, 20 breaths per minute. After 2 hours, 25. Then, slowly, the breathing steadied at 20, normal. The yellow eyes opened fully for the first time. The wolf's head lifted slightly, and its rough tongue brushed against Hannah's palm a single, deliberate lick. Hannah exhaled a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. "You're going to be okay." That's when she heard the truck engine outside. The barn door flew open, and her father stood silhouetted against the snow, his face frozen in an expression Hannah had never seen before. Behind him, red and blue lights flashed through the blizzard. David Morrison stood in the doorway for 3 full seconds before speaking, his weathered face cycling through shock, anger, and something else Hannah couldn't identify. Behind him, a sheriff's SUV idled in the snow, lights painting the barn walls in alternating red and blue. "Hannah," his voice was quiet, dangerously quiet. "What did you do?" She stepped in front of the wolf instinctively, arms spread. "Dad, I can explain. You stole my truck. You drove without a license. You brought a wild animal into my barn." He moved closer, boots crunching on scattered hay. Then he saw her bare feet, her lips tinged blue, the wolf lying docile behind her. His expression cracked. "Jesus, sweetheart, you could have died." "But I didn't." Hannah's voice shook. "And neither did she." David knelt beside the wolf, professional instincts taking over. He'd been a detective once before the department let him go for reasons he never explained, and he still moved with that same careful assessment. He checked the animal's breathing, examined its paws, felt along its ribs. "It's a female. Gray wolf, maybe 5 years old, dehydrated and hypothermic, but you stabilized her." He looked up at Hannah, and his eyes were wet. "You saved her life." The sheriff appeared in the doorway, a tall man with iron-gray hair and a face like carved granite. Sheriff Marcus Cole. Hannah had seen him at town meetings, always watching, always silent. "Mr. Morrison," Cole said flatly, "we need to discuss this situation." What followed was a tense conversation that Hannah only half heard. Words like protocol and wildlife regulations and safety hazard bounced around the barn, but David held firm. "My daughter did what any decent human being would do. She saved a life." Cole's expression didn't change. "The law doesn't distinguish between decent and illegal." That night, after the sheriff left with a warning that proper authorities would follow up, David did something unexpected. He took out his phone and filmed Hannah sitting beside the wolf, the firelight casting warm shadows across them both. "Why are you recording?" Hannah asked. "Because people should know what real courage looks like." He posted the video to the local community Facebook page with a simple caption, "My daughter saved a life today." By morning, it had 300 shares. By evening, 3,000. 3 days later, It hit 2 million views. The comments poured in. That girl is a hero. What an amazing kid. This is what humanity should be. But mixed among the praise were darker warnings. She broke the law. Wolves are dangerous. This won't end well. They came on the 4th day. Hannah was in the barn, feeding the wolf who she'd started calling the girl for lack of a better name when she heard vehicles approaching. Multiple engines. She stepped outside to find a convoy, 2 white vans marked Colorado Wildlife Conservation, 1 sheriff's SUV, and a news crew. A woman in her 50s emerged from the lead van, clipboard in hand. "I'm Jennifer Cole, head of Wildlife Conservation. You must be Hannah Morrison." Hannah nodded, suddenly aware of how small she was compared to these adults with their badges and paperwork. "We're here to retrieve the animal," Cole continued, "and to inform your father that keeping a wild wolf without a permit constitutes a federal offense. The fine is $50,000. The number hit like a physical blow. Hannah's knees went weak. David appeared beside her, jaw tight. "We don't have that kind of money." "Then we'll have to discuss alternative arrangements, asset seizure, property lanes." Cole's voice was clinical, detached. "The law is the law, Mr. Morrison." "The law." David's laugh was bitter. "That's rich, coming from Dad." Hannah grabbed his arm. She didn't understand the tension crackling between her father and the officials, but she knew it was dangerous. A veterinarian from the conservation team entered the barn with a portable scanner. Hannah followed, heart hammering. The wolf, stronger now, almost healthy, watched the strangers with wary yellow eyes. The vet approached slowly, professionally, and ran the scanner along the animal's neck. It beeped. "She's chipped," the vet announced, studying the small screen. "ID number SB2847CO. Registered in..." He paused, frowning. 2018. Jennifer Cole took the scanner, her expression shifting from bureaucratic efficiency to sharp interest. She pulled out a tablet, fingers flying across the screen. The barn fell silent except for the crackling stove. "This wolf is registered to a Sarah Elizabeth Bennett." Cole looked up. "Does that name mean anything to you?" David went rigid. "What did you say?" "Sarah Bennett, age 34 at time of registration. Listed address in Denver, but..." Cole scrolled down. "She was reported missing on March 15, 2018. Never found. There was an investigation. Her husband died in a car explosion 2 weeks prior. She was considered a person of interest." Hannah's world tilted. Sarah Bennett. The name detonated something in her memory, a fragmented explosion of images and sensations she'd buried for 7 years. A woman's gentle voice. A blue knitted scarf wrapped around small shoulders. The smell of peppermint. Arms lifting her, carrying her through dark woods while she cried. "Everything will be okay, little one. Show me her picture," Hannah whispered. Cole hesitated, then turned the tablet. A driver's license photo filled the screen, a woman with kind brown eyes and shoulder-length dark hair, smiling slightly at the camera. Hannah's breath caught. "I know her." Every adult in the barn turned to stare. "I was 5. I got lost in the woods during a camping trip with Dad. A woman found me, she kept me warm, gave me her scarf, walked me back to the ranger station." Hannah's voice cracked. "She told me everything would be okay. Then she disappeared before anyone could thank her." David's face had gone pale. "Hannah, are you sure? I never forgot her face. Dad?" Or her voice. Hannah looked at the wolf, understanding dawning like cold sunrise. And now her wolf found me. 7 years later, in the middle of a blizzard. Jennifer Cole closed the tablet slowly. "Then we have a much bigger problem than wildlife violations. If this animal belonged to Sarah Bennett, and Sarah Bennett was involved in a suspicious death..." She glanced at Sheriff Marcus Cole, who'd been standing silent in the doorway. "This is now a criminal investigation." The sheriff's face remained impassive. but something flickered in his eyes, something that made Hannah's skin crawl. "We'll need to take the wolf into custody," he said, "and I'll need statements from everyone." As they led the wolf toward the transport van, sedated now, limp in their arms, Hannah felt the trap snap shut around them. She'd wanted to save a life. Instead, she'd unearthed something that had been buried for 7 years, and whoever had buried it was still out there. The call came the next morning. Hannah sat at the kitchen table, staring at a bowl of oatmeal she couldn't eat. Through the window, she could see the empty barn. They'd taken the wolf, the girl loaded her into a van and driven away while Hannah stood helpless in the snow. The $50,000 fine notice sat on the counter like a death sentence. David's phone rang. He answered with a grunt, listened. Then his expression shifted. "Say that again." He put it on speaker. "Mr. Morrison, my name is Rachel Morgan. I'm a civil rights attorney based in Denver." The voice was young, energetic, warm. "I saw the video of your daughter and the wolf. What they're doing to your family is unconscionable, and I'd like to help." Hannah's head snapped up. "I don't have money for a lawyer," David said carefully. "I'm offering pro bono representation. I specialize in cases where good people are punished for doing the right thing." Papers rustled on the other end. "The wildlife violation statute has exceptions for emergency rescue situations. We can fight this, Mr. Morrison, and we can win." For the first time in days, something like hope flickered in Hannah's chest. "Why would you do this for free?" David asked. And Hannah heard the old detective in his voice, suspicious, probing. Rachel's laugh was easy, genuine. "Because I have a 12-year-old daughter too, and if she had the courage to do what Hannah did, I'd want someone to stand up for her. Sometimes it's that simple." They arranged to meet that afternoon at a coffee shop in town. Hannah insisted on coming. David agreed, though his jaw stayed tight the entire drive. Rachel Morgan was not what Hannah expected. She'd imagined someone stern and intimidating in a sharp suit. Instead, the woman who waved them over wore jeans, a University of Colorado sweatshirt, and had her dark hair pulled into a messy ponytail. She couldn't have been older than 35. "Hannah!" Rachel shook her hand like she was an adult, not a child. "You're incredibly brave. I mean that." They sat in a corner booth. Rachel spread documents across the table, precedent cases, statute annotations, strategy notes already drafted. "Here's what we're dealing with," she explained. "Colorado revised statutes, Title 33 Wildlife Code. The fine for possessing wildlife without a permit is steep, but there's a humanitarian exception clause that's rarely invoked. We argue that Hannah acted under duress, both emotional and environmental, to prevent imminent death. No jury would convict a child for saving a life." "Will it go to trial?" David asked. "Only if they push it." "Which they won't, if we get public pressure on our side." Rachel smiled. "That video has 2 million views now. We organize a town hall. Let Hannah tell her story. Get the community behind her. Wildlife conservation won't want the PR nightmare of prosecuting a kid who rescued an animal in a blizzard." It sounded almost too good to be true. Hannah felt the knot in her stomach begin to loosen. "Can I see her, the wolf?" Rachel's expression softened. "They're keeping her at the wildlife conservation facility outside Denver. She's in quarantine for health screening, but she's safe. I'll file a motion for supervised visitation. We'll get you in there." Over the next hour, Rachel outlined their plan: a press conference in 2 days, interviews with sympathetic media outlets, testimonials from wildlife experts about Hannah's proper care of the animal. She was thorough, prepared, and utterly confident. When she finally packed up her files, Rachel squeezed Hannah's shoulder. "We're going to fix this. I promise." After she left, David sat staring at his cold coffee for a long time. "What's wrong?" Hannah asked. "She's helping us." "Maybe." He rubbed his face. "Hannah, there's something I need to tell you. About Sarah Bennett." He'd never mentioned the case before, not in 7 years. Now the story spilled out like a wound reopening. I was the lead detective on her husband's death. Thomas Bennett died when his car exploded in their garage. Initially ruled accidental gas leak. Spark from the ignition. But the insurance policy was $2 million, and Sarah was the sole beneficiary. The department wanted me to arrest her. But you didn't, Hannah said. Because she was innocent. I knew it. The explosion wasn't an accident, but Sarah wasn't the one who caused it. Someone set that up, made it look like she did. His hands clenched into fists. I kept investigating, trying to find the real killer. Then suddenly I was removed from the case. Internal Affairs claimed I was too personally involved, that I wasn't being objective. 2 weeks later, I was forced to resign. Who made you leave? David's jaw tightened. Marcus Cole. He was my supervising officer then. Now he's sheriff. The pieces clicked together in Hannah's mind. The tension between her father and Cole. The way the sheriff had watched them with those cold, assessing eyes. Do you think he knows what happened to Sarah? I think Marcus Cole knows a lot of things he's never told anyone. David met her gaze, which is why we need to be very careful who we trust. That evening, Hannah stood in the barn where the wolf had slept. The space felt empty, haunted. She was about to leave when she noticed something scratch marks on the dirt floor near where the animal had lain. Not random scratches, deliberate ones. The marks formed an arrow, pointing south and west, toward Mesa Ridge. Hannah pulled out her phone and searched the conservation facility's number. When the automated system offered options, she pressed 3 for Animal Status Inquiry and entered the chip ID number she'd memorized, SB2847CO. The system pulled up a record. She scanned the details: name, registration date, vaccination history, and at the bottom, a feature she almost missed: GPS tracking log. The chip had a location function, and according to the data, the wolf had traveled to the same coordinates repeatedly over the past 7 years. A specific point on Mesa Ridge. The last recorded visit 4 days ago, one day before Hannah found her in the snow. Hannah's hands trembled as she zoomed in on the satellite map. The coordinates showed nothing but wilderness, dense forest, no structures, no roads. But something was there, something the wolf kept returning to. She was about to call her father when she noticed the document metadata at the bottom of the screen. It showed the last person to access this file. User R. Morgan, legal access date. This morning, 6:47 a.m., 2 hours before Rachel Morgan had called them, before she'd claimed to have just seen the video. Hannah stared at the screen, ice spreading through her veins. Rachel had been searching the wolf's records before she ever contacted them. She'd known about the GPS data, she'd known exactly where the wolf had been, and she'd said nothing. 200 people filled the town hall square, their breath forming clouds in the January cold. News vans lined the street. Camera crews jostled for position. Hannah stood on the temporary platform Rachel had arranged, microphone in her shaking hand, and looked out at a sea of faces she'd known her entire life. Mr. Patterson from the hardware store, Mrs. Chen who ran the diner, the librarian who'd given her books every week since she was 6. All of them watching, waiting. Rachel stood beside her, one hand resting supportively on Hannah's shoulder. "You can do this," she whispered. "Just speak from your heart." Hannah nodded and leaned toward the microphone. "My name is Hannah Morrison. I'm 12 years old." Her voice cracked, but she pushed through. 4 days ago, I ran away from school because 3 girls held my head underwater in the bathroom. They told me my mom left because I was worthless. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Hannah saw her father in the front row, jaw tight. I ran into the forest. I wasn't thinking about anything except getting away. And then I found her, a wolf, dying in the snow. I knew I should be scared. I knew I could get hurt. But all I could think was, tears spilled down her cheeks. Nobody should die alone. Not even a wolf. Someone in the crowd sobbed. Phones were raised, recording everything. I didn't save her to be a hero. I didn't save her to get famous or break the law. I saved her because 7 years ago, when I was lost and scared and thought I was going to die, a woman found me. She didn't have to help me. She was a stranger, but she wrapped me in her scarf and told me everything would be okay." Hannah's voice rose. That woman was Sarah Bennett, and this wolf belonged to her. The crowd erupted, shocked gasps, excited whispers, camera shutters clicking like machine guns. Rachel squeezed Hannah's shoulder. "Perfect," her grip seemed to say. "So I'm asking you." Hannah looked directly into the nearest camera. "Please don't punish me for trying to pass on the kindness someone showed me. Please don't take her away." Applause thundered across the square. People were standing, cheering, some openly crying. Hannah felt something bloom in her chest. Not quite hope, but something close. Maybe Rachel was right. Maybe they could win this. That's when the sheriff's SUV rolled into the square. The applause died like someone had cut the sound. Marcus Cole stepped out, flanked by 2 deputies. He moved through the crowd with the steady purpose of a man who'd made up his mind, his hand resting on his service weapon. "Hannah Morrison," he called out, his voice cutting through the silence. "Step away from the microphone." David moved to intercept him. "Marcus, what the hell are you doing?" "My job?" Cole climbed onto the platform, and suddenly the space felt very small. He pulled a folded document from his jacket. "This is a court order for the immediate euthanization of the animal in question. The health screening came back positive for rabies exposure. The wolf poses an imminent threat to public safety." "That's a lie," Hannah shouted. "She's not sick. The test results don't lie." Cole's face was carved granite. "The animal will be destroyed within the hour." Rachel stepped forward, her professional smile still in place. "Sheriff, surely we can discuss." "There's nothing to discuss, Ms. Morgan." Cole turned to her, and something passed between them, a look so brief Hannah almost missed it. "You've done your part." The words hung in the air like poison gas. Hannah's stomach dropped. "What does that mean?" Rachel's smile didn't waver, but it changed, became colder. "Hannah, sometimes in legal proceedings." "What does that mean?" Hannah's voice rose to a scream. David was already moving, phone out, pulling up something on the screen. "Rachel Morgan, attorney at law, specializing in corporate defense and—" His face went white. "Private counsel to Sheriff Marcus Cole since 2019. The square erupted in chaos. Rachel held up her hands, her warm demeanor evaporating like steam. "Let me explain. You lied to us." Hannah's whole body trembled. "You said you'd help." "I did help. I made sure the situation resolved itself quickly and cleanly." Rachel gestured to the crowd, the cameras. "You got your moment. You got to tell your story. Now the adults need to handle the rest." "The rest?" David's voice was dangerous. Quiet. "You mean covering up whatever Marcus doesn't want revealed about Sarah Bennett?" Cole's hand moved to his weapon. "Careful, David. Is that a threat, like the one you made 7 years ago when you forced me off the case?" David stepped closer, heedless of the gun. "I know you killed Thomas Bennett. I've always known. But I could never prove it because you buried every piece of evidence that pointed at you." The crowd had gone silent. Hundreds of people watching this confrontation unfold with horrified fascination. Cole's expression remained flat. "Those are serious accusations. You have any proof?" "Sarah had proof. That's why she ran. That's why she disappeared." David's voice carried across the square. "And now her wolf shows up after 7 years, and suddenly you're desperate to destroy it before anyone asks why." Ed. Hannah grabbed his arm. Cole pulled his gun. The crowd screamed, people scrambling backward. Deputies rushed forward. But Cole wasn't aiming at David. He pointed the weapon at Hannah. "The wolf goes," Cole said calmly. "Or I start asking questions about how a 12-year-old stole a vehicle and drove illegally. How her father, a disgraced ex-detective with substance abuse on his record, clearly has an unsafe home environment. Child Protective Services would be very interested." Hannah couldn't breathe. The world tilted. David moved between them. hands raised. Marcus, please. Oh, and there's one more thing. Cole's smile was a knife wound. Hannah, did your father ever tell you why he was so obsessed with the Sarah Bennett case? Why he couldn't let it go? Marcus, don't. Because Sarah was pregnant when she disappeared. 4 months along. Cole's eyes locked on Hannah. She was going to name the baby Hannah. The square spun. Hannah's knees buckled. That's right, Cole continued, his voice carrying to every phone recording, every camera broadcasting. Sarah Bennett is your biological mother. David Morrison isn't your father. He's the man Sarah gave you to before she ran, because she knew I'd kill you both if she stayed. Hannah looked at David, her father, the only parent she'd ever known, and saw the truth written across his devastated face. I was going to tell you, David whispered. I swear, I was going to. The sound of the gunshot was like the world breaking. David crumpled, blood blooming across his shoulder. He'd moved at the last second, trying to shield Hannah, and Cole's bullet had hit him instead. Someone screamed. Maybe Hannah. Maybe everyone. In the chaos that followed, deputies rushing Cole, the crowd surging, EMTs being called, nobody noticed the wildlife transport van at the edge of the square. Nobody saw its back door hanging open, lock picked, and nobody saw the gray wolf slip into the forest like smoke, disappearing into the Colorado wilderness. By the time they got David onto a stretcher, by the time they wrestled Cole into handcuffs while he shouted about self-defense and 50 witnesses, by the time Rachel Morgan tried to explain that this wasn't what she'd planned, Hannah was sitting on the cold ground, alone in the middle of the crowd, staring at her father's blood in the snow. She'd lost her father, both fathers. In a way, she'd lost the wolf. She'd lost the truth she thought she knew about herself. And her mother, the woman she'd searched for in dreams for 7 years, was somewhere out there in the mountains, alive, alone. And Hannah had no idea how to find her. David didn't die. That's what the doctor told Hannah 6 hours later. Her voice professionally calm in the way that meant things were very bad, but not quite worst case. The bullet had torn through David's shoulder, shattered bone, nicked an artery. He'd lost 40% of his blood volume before the EMTs stabilized him. He was alive, but he'd need surgery. Multiple surgeries, months of recovery, and Hannah wasn't allowed to see him. You're a minor, the social worker explained, her hands folded neatly on the clipboard. And given the circumstances of tonight's incident, Child Protective Services needs to evaluate your home situation before. He's my father. Hannah's voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. I need to see him. The man who raised you is facing charges for endangering a minor, allowing you to drive illegally, involving you in a criminal investigation. He didn't do anything wrong. The social worker's expression softened with practiced sympathy. I understand you're upset, but right now, you need to come with me. We've arranged temporary placement at... No! Hannah stood, the plastic chair scraping against linoleum. I'm not going anywhere. 2 hours later, she sat alone in a waiting room at the sheriff's station, surrounded by flickering fluorescent lights and the smell of burnt coffee. Through the window, she could see reporters still camped outside, their cameras pointed at the building like weapons. The video was everywhere now. Millions of views. Hannah Morrison, the girl who saved a wolf, discovered her mother was alive and watched her father get shot by a corrupt sheriff, all in 4 days. The internet had turned her tragedy into entertainment. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from strangers, praying for you, stay strong, you're so brave. Empty words that meant nothing. Rachel Morgan had disappeared. The charges against Marcus Cole were under investigation, which meant he'd be out on bail by morning. He'd claimed self-defense, said David had lunged at him. 50 people had witnessed it, and half of them would say whatever Marcus wanted them to say. The wolf was gone. David was bleeding out in surgery. Sarah, her mother. A word that still felt foreign in Hannah's mouth was somewhere in the mountains, probably dead after 7 years. Hannah had never felt more alone. The door opened. A young woman in deputy's uniform stepped in, glancing nervously over her shoulder. Her nameplate read, Heartman. I shouldn't be here, Deputy Lisa Hartman said quietly, sliding into the seat beside Hannah. But I can't just watch this happen. Hannah looked at her through swollen eyes. Watch what happened. Marcus burying the truth, again. Lisa pulled out a phone, not her department-issued one. Hannah noticed. I've worked under him for 3 years. I've seen things. Small things that didn't add up. Evidence that went missing. Witnesses who suddenly changed their stories. She unlocked the phone, her hands shaking slightly. I never had proof. Until tonight. She turned the screen toward Hannah. It showed the Wildlife Conservation Database, the same records Hannah had accessed 2 days ago. The wolf's chip has GPS tracking, Lisa explained. I pulled the complete location history. She's been returning to the same coordinates for 7 years. Same spot, every few weeks. She zoomed in on the satellite map. Mesa Ridge, about 5 kilometers northeast of here. There's nothing on the map, no structures, no roads, but something's there. Hannah's heart began to pound. You think Sarah is there? I think your mother has been hiding in those mountains for 7 years. I think that wolf was her only connection to the outside world. And I think she's why Marcus is so desperate to tie up loose ends. Lisa met Hannah's eyes. 4 days ago, the wolf's GPS showed unusual movement, erratic patterns, like she was lost or searching for something. Then she ended up where you found her. She was looking for help, Hannah whispered. Sarah is in trouble. That's my guess. But I can't prove it without going up there. And I can't get authorization without Marcus knowing. Lisa's voice dropped even lower. But you could go. Hannah stared at her. I'm 12. You drove a truck through a blizzard. You saved a wolf's life. You stood in front of 200 people and told your truth even when it was terrifying. Lisa squeezed Hannah's hand. You're the bravest person I know. They'll never let me leave this building. The shift changes at midnight. There's a 15-minute gap in the security desk coverage. The back door lock has been broken for a week. Maintenance keeps forgetting to fix it. Lisa pressed a folded paper into Hannah's palm. These are the coordinates. There's a trail that starts at Willow Creek Road. If you leave now, you could be there by dawn. Hannah unfolded the paper. Numbers and a hand-drawn map. 5 kilometers through mountain wilderness in January. Alone. In the dark. What if I can't find her? What if you can? Lisa stood, smoothing her uniform. Your mother has been surviving up there for 7 years. Hannah, she's strong. Like you. But if she's hurt, if the wolf came looking for help, she might not have much time left. After Lisa left, Hannah sat with the coordinates in her hand. She could stay, wait for the social worker to take her to some foster home. Let the adults handle everything while David bled and Sarah died alone in the mountains and Marcus walked free. Or she could run. One more time. At 11:47 p.m. The security desk was empty. Hannah slipped out the back door into the frozen night. Her father's old hiking jacket the only thing between her and the cold. She didn't look back. The trail to Mesa Ridge was barely visible under fresh snow. Hannah followed Lisa Hartman through the darkness, their flashlights cutting thin beams through the falling white. The deputy had caught up with her a half-mile from the station, breathing hard. You really think I'd let you go alone? Lisa had said. Now they climbed in silence, the temperature dropping to -18 Celsius. Wind screamed through the pines. Hannah's lungs burned with each breath. Her fingers were numb inside her gloves. After 2 hours, Lisa stumbled. Her ankle twisted on hidden ice, and she went down hard with a choked cry. I'm fine, she gasped. But when she tried to stand, her leg buckled. Just give me a minute. They didn't have a minute. Hannah checked the GPS coordinates on Lisa's phone. 2 more kilometers. You have to keep going, Lisa said, reading Hannah's face. I'll wait here. Go find your mother. I can't leave you. Yes, you can. Lisa pressed the phone into Hannah's hands. You've been brave this whole time. Be brave a little longer. Hannah wanted to argue, but Sarah was out there, possibly dying, and every second mattered. She ran. The forest became a blur of white and black, snow and shadow. Her legs screamed. Her heart hammered against her ribs. But she didn't stop. Not when branches whipped her face. Not when her lungs felt like they'd tear apart. Not when the rational part of her brain whispered that she was going to die out here. Because Sarah hadn't stopped either. 7 years ago, pregnant and terrified, Sarah had kept going, had stayed alive, had protected her daughter the only way she knew how, by leaving. The GPS beeped. 50 meters. Hannah slowed, panning her flashlight across the darkness. At first she saw nothing but trees and snow. Then there, a shape too angular to be natural, a cabin, small and weathered, nearly invisible under its blanket of white. No smoke from the chimney, no lights, no movement. Hannah's heart sank. She was too late. She tried the door, locked from inside. She pounded on it, shouting, "Sarah! Sarah Bennett! It's Hannah!" Silence. Then so faint she almost missed it, a sound, something between a whimper and a growl. "Varja!" Hannah pressed her ear to the door. "Girl, is that you?" A scratch. Weak, but deliberate. Hannah ran to the side of the cabin and found a window, half buried in snow. She kicked it in, ignoring the pain as glass bit into her boot. Then she climbed through, dropping into darkness. The beam of her flashlight swept across the interior. One room, a wood stove, cold, a table, a cot, and on the cot, a woman and a wolf. Sarah Bennett looked like a ghost. Gray streaked her dark hair. Her face was gaunt, skin stretched tight over bone. Her right leg lay at an unnatural angle, swollen and discolored, but her eyes, when they fluttered open, were the same kind brown from the photograph. "Hannah," she whispered, and it was the voice from Hannah's dreams, the voice that had said everything will be okay. Hannah crashed to her knees beside the cot. "I'm here. I found you. You're going to be okay. My baby." Sarah's hand trembled as it touched Hannah's face. "You're so big, so beautiful. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I left you." "Don't." Hannah grabbed her mother's hand, holding tight. "You saved me. You gave me to Dad so Marcus couldn't hurt me. You've been protecting me for 7 years." Beside Sarah, Varja lifted her head weakly. The wolf's gray fur was matted with mud and ice. She'd been caring for Sarah, trying to keep her alive. When Sarah fell and broke her leg, Varja had gone for help and found Hannah instead. The wolf's yellow eyes met Hannah's, and understanding passed between them. "Thank you for coming back." Hannah pulled out Lisa's phone to call for medical evacuation. Her finger hovered over the emergency number. "Wait." Sarah's voice was barely audible. "Marcus. He'll know. The radio system. He monitors everything." Hannah's blood went cold. "What do I do?" "Leave me. Take the evidence. Tell them everything." Sarah gestured weakly toward a metal box under the cot. "Photos. Recordings. Proof that Marcus killed Thomas. That's all that matters. I'm not leaving you to die. Better me than you." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I've lived 7 years in hiding. That's 7 years more than Marcus wanted to give me." "But you have your whole life ahead. You're 12 years old. You deserve to grow up." Hannah stared at her mother, this woman who had sacrificed everything, who had lived alone in the wilderness with only a wolf for company, who even now was more worried about her daughter than herself. The impossible choice crystallized in Hannah's mind. Call for help now Sarah might survive. But Marcus would intercept them and destroy the evidence. All 3 of them would die. And Marcus would walk free. Or wait until morning. Carry Sarah down the mountain in secret. Risk her mother dying from infection and exposure, but ensure the evidence reached people who could act on it. 30 seconds. Sarah whispered. "That's how long you have before hypothermia makes the choice for you." Hannah looked at Varja. The wolf was watching her with those intelligent yellow eyes. And suddenly, Hannah remembered something. The day she'd found Varja in the snow. The wolf had been dying. Every logical voice had said leave it. Save yourself. But Hannah hadn't listened to logic. She'd listened to something deeper, the knowledge that some lives are worth fighting for, even when the odds are impossible. She'd saved Varja against impossible odds. She could save Sarah too. We wait until morning, Hannah decided. I'll get Lisa. We'll carry you down the mountain ourselves. By the time Marcus realizes we're gone, we'll be at the FBI office in Denver with all the evidence. Hannah, that's suicide. You survived 7 years alone. I survived 4 days of hell. We're survivors. Mom? The word felt strange and perfect on her tongue. So we're going to survive this together. Hannah opened the metal box under the cot. Inside, a USB drive, photographs, documents, and a small audio recorder with a cracked screen. She pocketed it all, then turned to help Sarah sit up. The cabin door exploded inward. Marcus Cole stood silhouetted against the snow, a gun in each hand and 2 men flanking him. His smile was a predator's grin. Well, he said softly, isn't this touching? The family reunion I've been waiting 7 years to attend. He raised both weapons. Too bad it ends tonight. Hannah's hand moved to the evidence in her pocket. Marcus tracked the movement with his eyes. I'll take that, sweetheart. The USB drive, the recorder, all of it. How did you find us? Hannah's voice was steadier than she felt. GPS tracker on Deputy Hartman's phone? Did you really think I wouldn't monitor my own officers? Marcus stepped fully into the cabin, his 2 hired men, thick-necked and armed, blocking the doorway behind him. I've spent 7 years making sure Sarah Bennett stayed buried. You think I'd let a 12-year-old ruin that? Varja rose from the cot, a low growl rumbling in her chest. Despite her weakened state, the wolf positioned herself between Marcus and Hannah, hackles raised. Marcus didn't even glance at her. That animal should have died in the snow. Would have saved us all a lot of trouble. She saved my life, Hannah said. And I'm about to end it. So I guess we're even. Marcus cocked both pistols. Now, the evidence? Slowly. Hannah's mind raced. Marcus had 2 guns, 2 men. They were trapped in a single-room cabin with no back exit and a broken window too small to escape through. Sarah couldn't walk. Varja could barely stand. Impossible odds. But Hannah had beaten impossible before. Her fingers closed around the audio recorder in her pocket. It was still recording, had been recording since she'd touched it. Every word Marcus had just said was being captured. She needed to buy time. Make him talk. Why did you kill Thomas Bennett? Hannah asked. Marcus's jaw tightened. He was going to expose our operation, the money laundering, the drug routes through county property. Thomas got greedy, wanted a bigger cut, so he became a liability. And you framed Sarah. Easiest target in the world. Pregnant, emotional, stood to gain millions from his death. The department ate it up. Marcus's smile was cold. Would have worked perfectly if David Morrison hadn't grown a conscience. Behind Hannah, Sarah whispered, "Run. Just run." But Hannah knew she couldn't outrun bullets. Instead, she looked at Varja, really looked at her. The wolf's yellow eyes were locked on Marcus with predatory focus. Hannah had spent days caring for this animal, learning her body language, understanding her signals, and right now, Varja was waiting for a command. Hannah's hand moved slowly to Varja's head. She made a specific gesture, a downward press and forward push that she'd seen Sarah use in old photos from the evidence box. A command gesture. Varja's muscles coiled. "Last chance," Marcus said. "Give me the evidence or I start shooting." Hannah met his eyes. "Okay." She pulled the recorder from her pocket and threw it directly at Marcus's face. Everything happened in 2 seconds. Marcus flinched, his aim disrupting for a fraction of a moment. Hannah shouted, "Varja, go!" The wolf launched like a missile. 60 pounds of fury and fangs and desperate protection. She hit Marcus's gun arm just as he fired, and the shot went wild, shattering the cabin's remaining window. Marcus screamed. Stumbling backward into his men, Hannah grabbed Sarah under the arms and dragged her toward the broken window. "Mom, you have to help me." Sarah pushed with her good leg, biting back a scream as her broken one dragged across the floor. Behind them, chaos, Varya tearing at Marcus's arm, his men trying to aim without hitting their boss, more gunshots splitting the air. They were halfway to the window when one of Marcus's men broke free and aimed directly at Hannah's head. Time slowed. Hannah saw his finger tighten on the trigger, saw the barrel align with her skull, saw her death coming in high definition. Then Varja was there launching from Marcus, pivoting midair with impossible grace, placing her body between Hannah and the gun. The shot sounded like the world ending. Varja yelped a sharp, agonized sound and collapsed in the snow just outside the window. "No!" Hannah's scream tore from somewhere primal. But Sarah was pulling her through the window, both of them falling into the snow. Hannah's hand slipping in something hot and red, Varja's blood, pumping from a wound in her chest. The wolf's yellow eyes found Hannah's, still aware, still protecting. "Run," those eyes said. "I bought you time. Use it." Marcus appeared in the window, blood streaming from his shredded arm, rage twisting his face into something inhuman. "I'm going to kill you slow, both of you. Make it last." The sound of rotor blades cut through the night, massive, thunderous, growing louder by the second. Spotlights exploded across the clearing, turning night into day. Snow whipped into a tornado as 3 helicopters descended, 2 black, one with FBI printed in yellow letters. Marcus froze, his face cycling through shock, fury, and then calculation. He aimed his remaining gun at Hannah. "If I'm going down, you're coming with ba—" A red laser dot appeared on his forehead. "Drop your weapon." The voice boomed from the helicopter's PA system. "FBI, you are surrounded." Marcus's men threw down their guns immediately, hands raised, smart enough to know when they'd lost. But Marcus kept his gun trained on Hannah, and his smile returned broken, bleeding, but defiant. "You think you won. The evidence is on that recorder, which is currently inside the cabin, soon to be destroyed by the very convenient fire that's about to start." He gestured with his chin toward the cabin, where one of his men had kicked over the kerosene lamp before surrendering. Orange flames were already licking up the walls. "Shoot me, and you lose everything. Let me go, and maybe I let the girl live." FBI agents rappelled from the helicopters, but they were 50 meters away, moving fast but not fast enough. Hannah looked at Varya, bleeding out in the snow, looked at Sarah, helpless beside her, looked at Marcus, who'd destroyed so many lives and was seconds away from destroying the evidence that could convict him. The cabin was fully engulfed now. The recorder with Marcus's confession would be ash in minutes. Hannah made her choice. She dove toward the burning cabin. "Hannah, no!" Sarah screamed. Marcus fired. The bullet caught Hannah in the side, spinning her around. She felt no pain, just impact, like being punched. She stumbled, but kept moving, momentum carrying her through the flames and smoke, her hand reaching for the table where the recorder had fallen. The cabin's roof beam cracked above her with a sound like thunder. 1,500 pounds of burning wood collapsed toward her skull. And Hannah Morrison, 12 years old, who had saved a wolf and found her mother and stood against evil, could only look up as death fell from above. Hannah didn't feel the beam hit her. She felt arms strong, desperate tackle her sideways, driving her into the snow as the burning wood crashed where she'd been standing. Flames roared, smoke billowed, and when Hannah opened her eyes, she was staring up at Deputy Lisa Hartman, whose face was streaked with soot and determination. "Got you," Lisa gasped, and then she was dragging Hannah away from the inferno. The recorder clutched in Hannah's bleeding hand. Marcus Cole tried to run. He made it exactly 7 steps before FBI agents swarmed him, driving him face first into the snow. His screams of protest were drowned out by the helicopters, by the chaos of the arrest, by the sound of Hannah's own ragged breathing as Sarah crawled to her daughter's side. "You're shot," Sarah sobbed, hands pressing against the wound in Hannah's side. "Baby, you're shot. Mom." Hannah's voice was weak but clear. She held up the recorder, still intact. Still recording. We got him. The bullet had grazed her ribs painful, bleeding heavily, but not fatal. The FBI medic who examined her minutes later called it absurdly lucky. Hannah called it a miracle, but not everyone was lucky that night. Varya lay 20 feet away, her gray fur matted with blood. The bullet had punctured her lung. Her breathing was shallow, irregular. When Hannah crawled to her side, ignoring the medic's protests, the wolf's yellow eyes barely opened. "Stay with me," Hannah whispered, pressing her forehead to Varya's. "Please, you saved my life. Let me save yours." The wolf's tail twitched once, a final acknowledgement. Then her eyes closed. The FBI veterinarian worked on Varya for 40 minutes in the helicopter, hands moving with practiced efficiency, calling out medical terms Hannah didn't understand. Sarah held Hannah while they watched, both of them shaking, both of them covered in blood that wasn't entirely their own. Collapsed lung, severe hemorrhaging, but, the vet looked up, exhausted but smiling slightly. "She's a fighter. If she makes it through the next 6 hours, she might pull through." Varya made it through 6 hours, then 12, then 24. 3 days later, Hannah sat beside the wolf's recovery kennel at the FBI's wildlife facility, her own ribs wrapped in bandages, and watched Varja's chest rise and fall with steady, living breaths. "She's going to lose the leg," the vet had explained. "Too much damage, but she can live a full life with 3 legs. Some wolves do." Hannah didn't care how many legs Varja had. She was alive. That was enough. The trial of Marcus Cole lasted 4 weeks. The evidence Hannah had recovered, the recorder, the photos. The USB drive was devastating. Marcus's confession, recorded in the cabin, was played in open court. His financial records showed years of money laundering through shell companies. Phone records placed him at Thomas Bennett's house the night of the murder. 3 of his former deputies, granted immunity, testified about evidence he'd destroyed and witnesses he'd intimidated. Rachel Morgan, his attorney and co-conspirator, took a plea deal and testified against him in exchange for a reduced sentence. Hannah sat in the gallery every day, flanked by David and Sarah, her father, both her fathers. She'd come to think of them on either side. David's shoulder had required 3 surgeries, but he'd kept his arm. He moved slower now, favored his right side, but he was alive. And when the verdict was read guilty on all counts, 25 years to life, he reached over and squeezed Hannah's hand. "Your mom would be proud," he whispered. Then, catching himself, "Both your moms." Sarah squeezed Hannah's other hand. "I am proud, so proud," Hannah cried. Not from sadness, but from the sheer weight of everything finally being over. Marcus Cole was led away in handcuffs. He didn't look at them, didn't speak, just stared straight ahead as they took him. This man who'd controlled so many lives for so long, finally powerless. Justice wasn't loud or dramatic. It was just done. 6 months later, on a warm July morning, Hannah stood in front of a building that hadn't existed before. Varja's Haven, Wildlife Rescue and Rehabilitation Center. The sign was new, the paint still bright. The building itself was modest, converted from an old warehouse on the outskirts of town, but inside were spacious kennels, medical facilities, and room for a dozen recovering animals. The money had come from multiple sources, the $3.2 million seized from Marcus's accounts, a GoFundMe that had raised another $400,000, and grants from wildlife organizations across the state who'd been moved by Hannah's story. Sarah handled the day-to-day operations. David managed security and outreach, and Hannah, on summer break from school, helped with everything. Today, they were releasing their first success story. Varya stood in the outdoor enclosure, her gray fur gleaming in the sunlight. Her missing hind leg didn't slow her down as much as everyone had feared. She moved with 3-legged grace, sniffing the air, testing her freedom. "You don't have to stay," Hannah told her softly, kneeling outside the fence. "You can go. Run. Be wild. You've earned it." The wolf looked at her with those knowing yellow eyes. Then Varja turned and loped to the far end of the enclosure, where the gate stood open to miles of protected forest land. She paused at the threshold, looked back once at Hannah. Thank you. And then she was gone, disappearing into the trees like smoke. Hannah cried, but they were good tears, the kind that meant letting go of something you love because you love it. Sarah wrapped an arm around her shoulders. She'll come back to visit. I know she will. How do you know? Because that's what family does. Sarah kissed the top of Hannah's head. They always find their way home. That evening, the three of them, Sarah, David, and Hannah, sat on the porch of the small house they'd bought together with what remained of the settlement money. It wasn't much. 3 bedrooms, old hardwood floors that creaked, a view of the mountains where everything had happened. But it was theirs, a real home. Hannah had 2 parents now. Not in the traditional sense. David and Sarah weren't married. Probably never would be, but in the way that mattered. 2 people who'd sacrificed everything to protect her. 2 people who'd taught her that family isn't always blood, and blood isn't always family. Family is who shows up, who fights for you, who stays. You know what I was thinking, Hannah said, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and purple. What's that? Kiddo? David asked. That woman, the one who bullied me at school. Jessica. She tried to apologize last week. Sarah's expression hardened. What did you say? Hannah smiled. I told her I forgave her, because holding on to hate just makes you tired. And I'm done being tired. David and Sarah exchanged a look over her head, a look of wonder and pride. When did you get so wise? Sarah asked. I learned from a wolf, Hannah said simply. Later that night, after Sarah and David had gone to bed, Hannah stood at her window looking out at the dark forest. Somewhere out there, Varja was running free. Somewhere out there, the mountains held memories of everything they'd survived. And tomorrow, Hannah would wake up and go to work at the rescue center. She'd feed injured eagles and orphaned fox kits and maybe, someday, another wolf who needed saving. Because that's what survivors do. They save each other, over and over again, until the saving becomes healing, and the healing becomes hope. Some miracles don't announce themselves with thunder. They fall softly, like snow, and change everything. Hannah Morrison learned that truth in the coldest winter of her life. She learned that family isn't defined by blood alone, but by who stays when staying is hard. That gratitude isn't just saying thank you, it's paying forward the kindness once shown to you, even when it costs you everything. She'd been called worthless, told her mother abandoned her because she wasn't good enough. Those words had driven her into a blizzard where she could have died. Instead, she found a wolf, and through that wolf, she found her mother. And through her mother's sacrifice, she learned what love actually means. 7 years Sarah Bennett lived in hiding to protect her daughter. 7 years David Morrison raised a child who wasn't his blood because he'd promised to keep her safe. 7 years a wolf waited faithfully, becoming the bridge between a fractured family. And when Hannah had to choose between her own safety and doing what was right, she chose justice. Because that's what survivors do. They break the cycle. They save each other. Now I want to ask you something. Have you ever been called worthless by someone who should have known better? Have you ever been blamed for something you didn't do? How did you find the strength to keep going?